He was kidnapped by Gunther. Gunther had enough. Kidnap Lewis.
What has Lewis ever done to Gunther?
You know what? Lewis is an iced coffee guy, and Gunther only makes hot coffee.
It's not like Lewis ever had a chance with Rachel, so I don't know what Gunther has against him.
Lewis likes iced coffee, and Gunther only makes hot coffee. So in hearing so, Gunther put a stop to the iced coffee nonsense and took his life.
Gunther shut it down. Now, what are Gunther's opinions on cold brew?
Would Central Perk like to invest in a cold brew machine?
I just want to know, because it's like that uneven middle ground between the two options.
Oh, yeah. I mean, then there's people that, just take the high road and drink tea, and, you just don't do that.
Well, we don't talk to them, so it's fine.
Right. Yeah, they're put up an island.
They aren't our friends.
We could say he was abducted by, John Cena.
No, John just had his birthday. I don't want to ruin his birthday.
Oh, that's true. Well, I don't, he gets to go home with Nikki Bella. I don't think his birthday's going to be too bad.
Yeah, if he walks in thinking that he's going to get some birthday love from Nikki and Lewis is sitting in his front step, it's a rough birthday.
Yeah, we could spin it that way.
I'm trying to think.
Unless, he was just put in the car. We're going to go with that again.
Lewis was in the limousine that was crushed by Stone Cold.
You know what? No, actually, Lewis was in the ambulance that Braun Strowman flipped over.
Lewis was the driver of Jinder Mahal's limo that escaped the WWE Championship.
Oh, God. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Feed Me Sports podcast. I think this is episode 7 or 8. We've lost count. We can only count on.
We don't count so good.
Yeah, we can only count on one hand. It's okay. I'm, your host tonight, Alexander Birch, joined by my co-host, Alec Roman. Unfortunately, sad news today is Mr. Schaefer was abducted for the second time, which is really starting to get concerning. So tonight is our first annual NFL draft special. But before we get into that, Alec, I got to ask you, your reaction to the NBA NHL playoffs so far.
Well, I'm just going to start off right away by saying that after his comments going into round 1, Damian Lillard might have the lowest IQ of any man or mammal. I'll open it up to even sea creatures that I know of, saying we're going to beat the Golden State Warriors in 6 and they didn't even win a game.
Yeah.
So,
that's – I give him credit for at least – yeah, I give him credit for at least making the bold statement and trying, but you kind of pissed off the wrong team.
You really made the wrong people angry. I saw a good meme going around that said it had a picture of Kevin Durant on the bench when it said, when you find out the Warriors didn't really need you, they just needed you off Oklahoma.
Oh, man.
And it's true, but,
Yeah, keeping the theme with the NBA, I think it was 2 weeks ago when you and I were doing the show. Ironically enough, when I said that I wasn't a big believer in the Cavs and said they were tired, I got to say I stand corrected. I mean, they swept.
You want to retract that statement?
Excuse me. This is my apology statement to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Yeah, I mean, hey, I thought they were tired, but I guess that's what they want you to think. They came out and mollywopped the Pacers. But I got to ask you, do you think this is the end of the line for Paul George in Indiana?
Oh, yeah. No, I think he's gone. I think he's made – he has said that he – is all behind Indiana and all this other stuff, but I gotta believe that, especially after what just happened in the West with Oklahoma, I think that Paul George could be flying his way to the middle of the country very soon.
That would be unreal.
Because I mean, there's just no reason for him to stay in Indiana anymore.
I think after game 1 when he said he needed the shot, he needs to make the game-winning shot or, any clutch shot for that matter. While that might be true, I just don't think you say that. You don't put a teammate down and saying, I need the ball, you can't be the one.
Right.
I mean, that might be common sense, but, I just think that was kind of a little slap in the face to CJ Miles who, it was a tough shot in game 1 that could have won them the game, but
But
I mean,
he did miss that shot that lost them Game 4.
he did.
He took the shot that would have won them the game in Game 4, and he missed.
Yeah,
so,
but
I mean,
I think they're right. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean, when I think about that team, if he was on a team with 4 young players, he was on a team with people who were constantly being drafted, and they had stuff going on in the works, and they do have Mahimi, who is a good player. I'm not gonna say he's not. He is. But Lance Stevenson is not gonna get any better. Jeff Teague is not gonna get any better. So I just think it's time for Indiana to look at building that team around Mahimi as their center and moving.
Yeah,
on
and Miles
George.
Turner.
And Miles Turner as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
And move on from the Paul George days and kind of just start over. And as awful as that sounds, because I can't imagine Paul George without the word Indiana across his chest, I could think of 2 destinations for him right now coming out of the West, being LA and OKC, because those are 2 teams who have been a little bit disrespected in the past 2 weeks by their opponents, and they could definitely look to bring in some firepower to make sure that they stay relevant.
Yeah, no doubt. I like what you said about it would be hard to imagine him not having the Indiana, but I'll do you one better. I think you're talking about the Clippers, LA.
Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Lakers make the play for him in the offseason.
Absolutely true.
Magic Johnson's taken over that team now, and he wants to win now. They have some draft picks. Put him in there. He'd be the face of the team with a young core. So yeah, round 2. I think there's still some games going on in the NBA. Still some decisions.
Yeah, there's the Bulls.
Yeah.
The Bulls Celtics is still going on.
Bulls Celtics.
Washington Hawks, and then
Washington's
Memphis.
got that.
Memphis put up a real fight in San Antonio. Good for them.
They really are. Yeah, and then Clippers and
Utah
Jazz
taking out the Clippers.
Unreal. So we'll quickly move to the NHL. We are in round 2. We are in full swing. What surprised you the most with round 1?
That we called most of the matchups.
Yeah, we did. It might be the only sport you and I, can come to a consensus with.
we called most of the matchups when we did our original 2 weeks ago. But I think that the matchups that have come out of round 1, and feel free to disagree with this, are the best case scenarios for all of this. Honestly.
Well, I mean, I did not expect the Blackhawks to get swept.
But in the
that
face,
caught me off guard on so many levels. But yeah, I know what you're saying.
If you look at what the future of the NHL is going to look like in the next 5 years, I mean, granted, we don't know what's going to happen with Vegas coming.
Yeah, that expansion draft is going to be key.
That has a whole different can of worms. But ignoring the Vegas thing, these are the teams that are going to run. Looking to run the NHL in the next few years. I mean, you got Nashville, who's always kind of been up there with Shea Weber being the face of their franchise. But with that, that change of scenery trade essentially with the Canadiens has worked out so well for Nashville.
Yeah, it has.
You have St. Louis, who traded away Shattenkirk, who was their star defender, still wins games. I don't know how, but they're doing it. Jake Allen.
They took apart Minnesota. I mean, and it's like you said 2 weeks ago. If Minnesota were to lose the series, they really need to take a look in the mirror. I mean, they didn't just lose that series; they rolled over. They rolled over, and I was surprised because the Blues traded Shaq Kirk, one of the premier defenders, and I didn't write them off. I thought that could be a 6-7 game series, but they were on a whole nother level.
Yeah, no, and they, it shocked everybody, and I think that it's going to come down to is it's like, hey, we were this good without Shattenkirk. I think, yes, they won't get Shattenkirk back in the offseason. He's already kind of stated that he's going to New York, but they could always pull in somebody else from somewhere else and say, hey, listen, there's a spot open if you want to win. If you think about it, they could even look at if Minnesota decides that they're going to go real young and blow it up. Suter is on his way out, and if Suter wants to go to St. Louis, I mean, I wouldn't put it past them to pull him in and say, "Hey, listen, we already have a team that can win. Come join us."
Yeah, that's a good point. But going with the theme of the younger teams. I mean, how about Edmonton?
Edmonton, I mean, takes out the Sharks, and I mean, kind of like we had predicted, energy. You just when you come in with a lot of
it's
energy.
that young team. Yep.
And they're playing against. I think that matchup is extremely interesting because you have the Ducks who swept Calgary. We talked about last week.
The Flames just could not beat
the Flames
the Ducks.
can't win. But the Ducks versus Edmonton is kind of this like old guard versus the new guard of that division because they are in the same division. It's kind of the guys who have been running it, the Getzlaffs, Corey Perry, Bobby Ryan when he was there, Friedrich Anderson when he was there, all those guys that were in Anaheim when we kept calling it for them to win. They're going to win, and they just never could pull it off. And then there have Edmonton, who's this team where if you had told me at the beginning of the season that the Oilers were going to be in the second round of the playoffs, I would have been like, nah, they're not going to get that far. But they are, and I think they're now challenging to say, like, this is our division now. You don't run this anymore. Have fun being mediocre with Calgary over there. Like, we're gonna run this.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing too is we talk about the youth theme with the Oilers. I mean, you look at it now, they have the firepower in terms of the youth and the younger players that they might be able to attract older veterans to come play with them. It's a perfect situation for them.
I mean,
and
they already
what?
have.
They can only get better.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And if you're looking at guys who are like thinking about, this is my last 2, 3, maybe even this is my last year. I want to see if I can win. What better guy to play with than a Connor McDavid or an Austin Matthews?
Absolutely.
Both, them and the Maple Leafs have proved themselves as the 2 top teams in their respective conferences.
Without a doubt.
Days. We'll kind of talk about that. Toronto, yes, you could say that Washington beat Toronto, and we kind of saw that coming. But Toronto put up one hell of a fight. And how about this? 5 out of the 6 games went to OT.
Yeah,
that's
and
insane.
You know what? That says a lot because when you look at the makeup of Washington, they can beat you with scoring, they can beat you with defense, and I argue they have one of the, if not the best, goaltenders. And Toronto really did put up a fight. And you know what? Again, it's like Edmonton. That team can only get better going forward.
Right, and they can only learn from this. And if they play Washington again next year, all intents and purposes, Shattenkirk won't be there. There'll be a lot of guys who aren't going to be there, and they're going to have to find replacements for it. And if those replacements aren't as good, Toronto could pull in some major firepower this offseason and really make Washington hurt because they almost did it. They lost. Toronto won all the games in overtime that they could, but they lost the one regular time game. So if they could force that last game to go to overtime and then flip some of those overtime decisions, they go into the second round 4-2, not Washington. And that's
absolutely.
Terrifying. That's terrifying for a team who literally had the first pick last year and now is going to be a playoff team.
And now here they are.
5.
Yeah, and credit that to Babcock. Babcock's their coach. Doing just a tremendous job. For me, I think one of the big surprises had to be, you and I thought that the Rangers and Habs were going to go to 7 just because they almost balance each other so perfectly. The Rangers steal it in 6, and I know Lewis, he's our good New York Rangers fan. But I don't know. I think they got a tough test against Ottawa, and I think that's going to be a really fun series.
I think that's going to be a fun series because it's going to get real physical. And again, it's a battle of 2 goaltenders. Who shows up every night? Who's going to make the most saves? Anderson, Lundqvist. That's what it comes down to. Because, again, like we had said against Montreal, everybody matches up. You want to say Derek Stepan's an elite goal scorer. Bobby Ryan. Like, it's just...
Oh, yeah.
we do this again. We do... And, here we go again with these, comparisons of player to player. They all match up. And I'm ready for that series to... Maybe 6. I think 6 or 7 games that series is going to go down to, and I expect to see more overtime.
Yeah, I have it at 7, but I also said that about the previous series with the Habs. That's pretty much. We wanted to do a quick NBA NHL recap because, of course, tomorrow night and this weekend, obviously, is the NFL draft in Philadelphia. So we are going to spend the rest of the time covering that. The first thing that I wanted to throw out there was, I think, a fabulous story. Great job by the Baltimore Ravens. They pick at number 17, and they have a young boy who is – they pick 16, I'm sorry. And they have a young boy who is battling cancer, and he through the Make-A-Wish Foundation will be announcing their pick. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's awesome. Hands down,
Yeah.
I got to say it's fantastic. Hats off to Harbaugh, who was actually the person reading up on the story now. Harbaugh found this kid on the wait list. He wasn't even up for his Make-A-Wish yet, but he was a Ravens Make-A-Wish, and he was like the first Ravens Make-A-Wish on the list. And Harbaugh found him and said, "We want to do it." And the Ravens organization, hats off to them as well, saying that, yeah, sure. Because you think about it, all the people in a lot of teams go with their pros. Like I expect Michael Strahan to make a call for the Giants tomorrow.
Oh boy.
I expect Lawrence Taylor to make a like a 3rd round pick for the Giants and all. Like everyone does. I would expect.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if T.O. shows up making a pick for the Cowboys. Everyone sends their old players. But for them to kind of shut down, I mean, all of the people they could have brought in, Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, all those guys, to say, no, we're going to send in this kid. And I said it to you before we started recording, though. Philly has a history of booing things that they don't like. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm not saying it will, because I'm putting a lot of faith in that crowd. If anyone boos that kid, it's a 3-hour drive. I'll make it down there and personally beat whoever booed.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, look, Philadelphia does have that reputation. I mean, we booed our 2nd round pick, and we booed Santa Claus. But, I don't think that people talk enough about some of the good things Philadelphia does do for situations like that.
I hope this.
I would expect there's a standing ovation for him. But with that being said, there's been a lot of talk about who the Eagles might send out for their 14th pick. I think the 2nd round they confirmed is going to be Ron Jaworski, again, ESPN analyst, was a former quarterback, and then the round 3 pick is going to be announced by John Dornbus, who, if you don't know, is the Eagles' long snapper, was also on America's Got Talent. I believe 2 seasons ago was the Magic Man. Great stuff. I thoroughly enjoy Magic now because of it.
I want him to just announce all the picks and do it with like doves and scarves out of the throat and like all that weird stuff.
How great would it be if he just walked up with the Browns pick and it was like some card that had like the wrong name, but it was like a magic trick and it was like, oh, just kidding, it is Myles Garrett.
I hope he breaks out of like a glass tank to give the Eagles pick. Like I hope he Houdini some shit, because I would be thoroughly entertained at that point.
Oh yeah. So at 14, there's been a lot of rumors, and the first one I want to get your reaction to is the possibility of Kevin Hart. Now, Kevin Hart, obviously one of the biggest movie stars, comedians, is a Philly guy, really got his name going to Philadelphia games with the Sixers. And then there's also the possibility of Bradley Cooper, who grew up in Jenkintown, and obviously the movie Silver Linings Playbook had a lot to do with the city of Philadelphia and the Eagles. And then there's this one. And I know you're going to get a kick out of this one. And it's a shame that Lewis isn't here to hear this. But there has been some talk of a former player making a pick. Okay. And this former player was once wronged when he was picked.
Oh,
now,
no.
This would be the opportunity for Philadelphia fans
to boo the crap out of him again.
Well, see, that's the funny thing is, it's like they're talking about
retirement.
They were talking about this on 94.1 WIP, the big Philadelphia sports talk show. There's always going to be those group of Eagles fans that want to be assholes, and even I'll say that as a Philadelphia fan. It would be cool, I think, to see McNabb go up there and them actually cheer him. But there's going to be a part of me that fears that there are going to be jackass fans that boo, and the media is going to eat that up. Like, here we are 18 years later, and they still boo Donovan McNabb.
Donnie Mac. Yeah. Oh, I know. Well, that's why. Listen, I understand that, Donnie was the quarterback of the franchise for many years and our formative years growing up watching football. But, and I'm not saying this because I don't like Donnie Mac. I have nothing against Donnie Mac. Good for him to have a career. He's going to do he's doing much better than I ever will. I want to say, yes, Kevin Hart is from Philly. Bradley Cooper's from Philly. You could even throw in Mark Wahlberg because he was in a movie about the Eagles. But
yeah, that's true. Will Smith.
There's only one person, I think, in reality, that can make that first-round pick for you, and maybe this is me just being insane. This is me just being the hopeful.
Throw it at me. I got to hear this. Then.
Is there anyone else than the man whose statue is 5 feet from the fact that where you're going to do this?
You know what? That's actually interesting that you bring that up, and let the record show Alec and I have not talked about this prior. I really wondered why they would not have Sylvester Stallone come and announce the pick. Did no one call Rock? Like, one of the things is,
I don't want to say it. He's a fictional character. Let's get it out there. He's not real.
Well,
but, like...
He is. He was put in the Boxing Hall of Fame. But it's the fact that it was such an iconic movie.
Mr. T's in the Wrestling Hall of Fame. I don't think Hall of Fames count for anything anymore.
But... even people from outside cities, we always get the joke, Philadelphia worships a fake character. But there's still always going to be that mutual respect for the movies and how iconic they were and, how it portrayed the city of Philadelphia that, you can have them down, but they'll fight back. I think, and I totally agree with you, at 14, what better way than to start hitting the Rocky theme song, have him run up the steps and announce the pick?
All right, hold on. I want to throw this out there. It's his goddamn steps. It's his goddamn statue. He funded the movie by himself. He wrote the thing by himself. There is no other person in my mind that could make that first. Yes, if you want to say Kevin Hart gets to do round 3 or round 4 or whatever else, I don't care. I'm not even watching at that point. But there's only one person to make your first round pick for you. You're at his goddamn memorial.
You know what? The more you say it, the more I agree. And here's the thing.
If the Brooklyn Nets had the first NBA pick and it wasn't the Celtics, and they had Biggie Smalls' mom instead of Jay-Z come up and make the pick, yes, everyone would cheer Biggie Smalls' mom, but Jay-Z's the reason why you're there. You know what I mean?
No, I hear you. And it's like, the problem is I see it 14 Roger Goodell going up there and Philadelphia just letting him have it.
Well, I expect every team to, for the rest of time, as long as he's commissioner, to let him have it.
Absolutely. But Philadelphia is notoriously that booing city that just, you can hear the deafening boos from a mile away.
Right.
I just you're painting this beautiful picture of Rocky going up and announcing the 14th.
We might have to get him a Stairmaster. We might have to get him, an oxygen tank by the time he reaches the podium, because he is an old man now. But
he is.
Maybe Michael B. Jordan will come help him up the steps. But it's just, to me, as someone, I'm not a marketing person. I'm not. Never was. But if you came to me and you said, Alec, I want you to sell the Eagles' first round pick in Philadelphia in front of the art museum, I'd be like, oh yeah, how about we just get the giant bronze statue to do it? Well, I don't know. Like, that's just me going out on a limb here.
You get the guy who literally personifies Philadelphia.
Because otherwise, without that movie, those are just steps.
They're just steps to an art museum.
They're just way too many steps to an art museum. That's even at a level. The entrance is another level higher, which is dumb. Can we admit that right now?
Well, and it's interesting too because before we move on to the direct itself, so they were talking about how they chose the city of Philadelphia because there's apparently somebody hired by the NFL to choose the location each year.
Yeah.
And I guess they were between Philadelphia, Kansas City, and I think Green Bay, because Green Bay put their bid in for next year.
It's too cold.
But yeah, so
every prospect's wearing jackets.
So the gentleman, I completely forgot his name, but the story was that he, when he came to Philadelphia to landscape the city and see where they would do it, how they would construct it, he went up the Rocky steps, took the view, and said, "This is perfect." But you know what? Notice how I said the Rocky steps. I didn't say the art museum steps. He walked up the Rocky steps.
No one calls it the Philadelphia Art Museum.
It's the Rocky one.
That's the building that sits on top of the Rocky steps that no one goes into.
Unless, you're a 6th grade, class field trip and you want to go see some art. But even still, you're going to have kids that run up the steps thinking that they're Rocky.
I've been to Philadelphia 5 or 6 times now, and I've been to the steps about 4 out of those 6 times. I have been inside that museum once, and that was because I needed a bathroom. So like, I run up
So that's
the
almost like
steps
the time in Friends when Joey goes into the library just to use the bathroom.
Right. No, I ran up the steps. I've taken X amount of pictures with the statue. I've taken those dumb photos in front of the love sign and whatever else. But I've been inside the actual museum once because I had to find out where their toilet was. So like
That is completely fair.
to me, there's no other option, and I think the city of Philadelphia is doing, or not the city, I won't say the city, but the ownership of the Eagles is doing a great disservice to their fans and their marketing team if they don't get Sylvester Stallone to do at least one pick. I don't care if he phones it in. Have him Skype call it. I don't care. Just have the man there, because that's the only person that could really make that pick for them if you really want to make it memorable. I mean, Kevin Hart's good, Bradley Cooper's fine, but Sylvester Stallone is essentially a Philadelphia icon as a character.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, and I hope that maybe through the grapevine that Jeffrey Lurie and Eagles management hear this and take this to the NFL for the weekend. But now, here we go, NFL draft. I got to ask you, we've talked about it before, but now it's really starting to pick up some steam. The Cleveland Browns are on the clock tomorrow as of 8 o'clock sharp. Do you take Mitch Trubisky or Myles Garrett?
Myles Garrett. It's just here's the reason. And I'm quick to say that because there's only one reason behind it. Every draft has one generational athlete. I think we saw that last year with Ezekiel Elliott. That's a freak running back. I mean, just an animal.
Yeah.
And
I'd like to say Carson Wentz, but we'll all have.
No, let's be honest. Like, let's put our bias aside for a second.
Ezekiel
Elliott dressed up in anyone else's uniform would be his biggest
you
opponents.
could even make the case. Yeah, you could even make the case for Jalen Ramsey at some point.
Yeah, you look at. I mean, J.J. Watt was the freak of his generation. There's every draft class has that freak athlete. And speaking, not from a depth chart standpoint, not from anything else, but the fact that you can at number one grab the guy who's going to change your entire franchise, who's going to be the face, who could be the face of your franchise for years to come, who has no background issues, no outstanding issues, has no arrests in the past 6 months.
Yeah, and speaking of this draft, there's a lot of that going on right now. We can get to that later, but
right. This is a guy with a clean record, plays very good football, can stand up, can go down on the line, can stop the passing game, he can stop the running game. I mean, he does everything you ask for out of a defensive player, and you're going to go with the kid from Cleveland? I know that, Los Angeles did that last year with Goff, but if anything, Goff is a cautionary tale. I think that's the cautionary tale.
I think you're hearing a lot of this because, we said it, and I mean, it's just common fact. The Browns have been searching for a quarterback for 22 some years.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think the reason why you're hearing Trubisky's name is because I think they're panicking that, would the Jets swipe him up? Would Buffalo maybe take the chance on him?
Well,
would, not the Cardinals. I apologize. The Bills and the Jets. And I've even seen some mocks with the Jaguars and, taking him and using him as a chip to push Blake Bortles. But, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, this guy, there are far and few between ones in a generational talent. And if you watch Myles Garrett at A&M and you watch his combine and his pro day, this guy has 15, 16, 17 sacks a year written all over him.
And
if I'm the Browns and look at the pieces I have, he's just a quiet guy who just does his business.
Yeah.
And, to pair him with Jamie Collins and Joe Hayden and Danny Shelton and just the astronomical amount of picks they have that they can continue to build their defense, it's almost impossible to pass him up.
And look, here's the thing. It's not like the Browns just have one pick. It's not like they go one and they don't go again to the second round. They go again. They have another pick. I believe it's 12. You can trade up.
12, yeah, and
you can trade up from 12. If you're afraid of the Jets, make a deal with the Jets because the Jets need more picks than anybody. Make a deal with the Jets. Say, hey, listen, we'll give you X amount of picks. let us get 6 so we can get our quarterback. And even if you miss Trubinsky, you take one and you say, listen, we're taking Myles Garrett. And Trubinsky goes 2 to the Niners, which I don't understand why they would, but say they do. The Niners get Trubinsky so they have their quarterback for the future. Is Deshaun Watson really that bad of an option? Is Deshaun Kaiser really that bad of an option? Is Mahomes
Patrick
really
Mahomes?
that bad of a
Yeah. It's,
there are a
and
lot
you know
of
what? A lot of people, and a lot of people have even slid Davis Webb's name into the first round, just given his mobility and his arm. I mean, that's just a perfect explanation of it. I just, at 12, Watson and Mahomes should be there. Theoretically, they should be there. And even still, if I'm Cleveland, they need to just, I think, take a breath and not panic with the quarterback situation.
I don't
they
think
have
they
nice
are.
pieces.
I think the rest of the league is panicking, just saying.
For them.
they could almost, they're like, it's almost like there's this investment from outside analysts and other people from the league to make sure the Browns don't screw this up. But I think by putting more pressure on them, that's the way that they screw this up. Because let's think about, Jared Goff. Now, I keep bringing him up, and I don't mean to be mean to Jared Goff. I think Jared Goff has the potential to be a great football player. But you think about all the people
if the Rams could just retain a number 1 pick, a first-round pick.
Well, no, but let's just, if Jared Goff, was given the starting job as of last season and said, day 1, you're starting, get ready, know your teammates, I think he has a much better season. I think, the fact that they threw him in there like halfway through and they were like, Case Keenum's losing, go.
Well, I think the reason why they didn't play him was he was the kind of quarterback where the Rams were allowed to at least tank, theoretically, where he could learn from Keenum for a couple games. And really, the same situation applied to Carson Wentz. If you had told me back at this time last year that the Eagles were going to take Carson Wentz and he was going to start all 16 games, I would have said, no, you're delusional. Because the plan really was for him to sit behind Sam Bradford until Bradford either fell apart body-wise with injury or just played so bad that Eagles fans booed him out and they had to put Wentz in.
Right.
Really, Goff and Wentz were, 1 and 2 because they had the talent, but they just needed the grooming time.
Right. And I think that's a different case, but think about all the guys that were taken after Goff. You know what I mean? Imagine if LA had brought in Joey Bosa. Imagine if,
Joey Bosa and Aaron Donald. Oh, good God.
Yeah, think about all these guys that could have been brought in instead of Jared Goff, but they went with Jared Goff because they were like, we need our quarterback. And
it's the most important position, but when I look at the Browns, they actually have decent pieces on offense, and if they can walk out with Garrett, who could be the backbone of their defense for the next 15 years, I take him number 1, and I'll address quarterback at 12, but even me personally, I don't need them to address it at 12. Address it in the second round. Maybe you can get Kaiser. Because I'm looking at it as you get Garrett at 1, go get yourself a linebacker or a corner at 12 and really start to put together a defense that could be around for the next decade. Which, I mean, if you look at it, a defense is the best friend to a young quarterback.
Well, I'll ask you this, and we've said this. I mean, everyone says it. It's a quarterback league, and it's everyone needs their star quarterback. But I want you to think about all the idiots that have played quarterback over the years and won games. You look at guys like Tyrod Taylor had that breakout season 2 years ago with the Bills. You had Alex Smith, who's not the best quarterback in the world, but wins games. Joe Flacco, not an elite level quarterback, wins games.
And a Super Bowl.
Yeah, Trent Dilfer wins Super Bowls. All these guys that have ridden great defenses or whatever the situation may be straight to Super Bowls. I don't even remember who was the Bears when they faced Peyton Manning and the Rex Grossman. I mean, you don't always need the guy who's going to hurl the ball downfield. You don't need your Tom Brady. You may need a guy who's just smart enough not to make mistakes.
You know what? That is actually I love you. I have confessed my love for you because so there it is, ladies and gentlemen.
But it's true. Just get the guy that's not going to make mistakes. Because look at the Cowboys. Success.
Oh, that's exactly what I was going to say.
So much success from a guy that was not supposed to play, and that they didn't want to. But he stepped up at the right time.
Yeah, the NFL is so. You hear all these analysts say that it's a quarterback-driven league, and yes, I mean Brady, Rodgers, Breeze, Big Ben, Eli, Derek Carr, Cam, the list goes on and on. When you look at teams that win Super Bowls, there's a common theme in the last decade. I mean, it even goes to the teams with those quarterbacks. They have defenses.
Yeah.
And the reason why the reason why the Kansas City Chiefs are such a consistent team behind a quarterback who can't throw it more than 15 yards is a defense. The reason why the Denver Broncos won the Super Bowl behind Peyton Manning, who really was at the end, was a defense. Yeah. The reason why the Seahawks completely obliterated Denver was a defense. The Patriots have a defense. I get that you need a franchise quarterback, but you don't need a quarterback to beat Tom Brady every single week. You need a defense. You need to shut down opposing teams' offenses. And, this is why I was saying a couple weeks ago, and you were giving me crap for it, I think in a funny way, but I think the Vikings can win with Sam Bradford.
I just don't like Sam Bradford. It's not. That's nothing against you. I just don't like Sam Bradford.
If I'm building a team, if I'm a GM going into this draft, I think this draft is absolutely loaded with defensive talent. I think more so than ever before. If I'm a GM looking to build a team like I am with Cleveland or San Fran or hell, even the Bears, I don't need to rush the quarterback. I want to build my O-line. I want to build my defense. And then, you know what, maybe later in the draft, or I'll come back next year, then I'll say, let's address the quarterback position, because I'll use the Browns as an example. They have Myles Garrett. They have Jamie Collins. They have Joe Hayden. They have, whoever else they draft, Danny Shelton. They rebuilt their offensive line.
Let's be honest. They have a good defense. I'm not going to dance around it. They do have a good defense.
Terrible, but it needs more.
No, I think because you look at the guys who played last year. I forget his name off the top of my head, and I'm going to hate myself because I'm going to remember it as soon as we stop recording. But Joe Hayden was the number one, obviously, last year.
Jamar Taylor.
Yeah, two guys on that defense stepped up and played.
Jamar Taylor at corner and Carl Nassib, who was I just know him because he was from Penn State, had a solid year.
Carl Nassib stepped up.
Demario Davis was in a middle linebacker.
Their safety stepped up. Yes, they've lost a few pieces, but Jamie Collins came in and really played well. I think they are a Myles Garrett away from being the best defense in that division, just between the four teams there.
I still have to give the nod to Baltimore.
Well, Baltimore also depends on how much everyone can stay healthy.
That's true. That's very true.
Baltimore has the past of we have these great players, but then everyone breaks.
For me, I think the Browns are a Myles Garrett and a linebacker away to pair with Jamie Collins.
Honestly, I don't even think they need a linebacker that bad. I really don't think they need it that badly. I just think they need someone who's going to learn with Jamie Collins. Because I think, let's be honest, and I think we like to think about this as, we need an elite level player. All of these guys are elite. There is no less than elite anymore once you hit this draft. There isn't. If you were good enough to think about all the players that play youth football in high school to get a scholarship to go to college. Think about all the college players in all three levels.
So you want to tell me Nelson Aguilar is elite?
He is, because if you line me up, yes, he's not elite.
You know what?
It comes down to the NFL.
I want that clip edited, and I'm gonna post that everywhere.
But think about it.
No, but I see what you're saying.
If I lined up from across from Aguilar, yes, he drops the ball, but he burned my ass. So,
well, I know. I'm just being a jackass and giving you shit for it, but I know exactly what you're saying.
I think when you have Jamie Collins being the anchor of your linebacker core, I think you get anybody. I think you could wait, till the third round, the fourth round, to go get a linebacker that no one's really heard of. You can get a scheme fit linebacker, not an elite linebacker who's just going to learn the system and make those clutch plays. Think about the Giants, because I know their linebacker core pretty well, as terrible as it is. But they're players that play their position and nothing else. Kelvin Shepard, Jonathan Casillas, Devin Kennard will never make game-winning plays. But they will make drive-stopping plays. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They will stop the run. They will pressure the quarterback. They won't intercept the ball with their pinky toe and kick it up to their hands and do a dance in the end zone. But they're going to make the plays that they need to make, and I think that's what the Browns have to look for.
Well, how many times did the Patriots have somebody who came out of nowhere, and it's eventually they make a name for themselves because they just do it so consistently and people catch on, but once upon a time, Jamie Collins was a nobody.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just, Bill Belichick finds these guys and it's like, well, you know what? You fit my scheme and I'm going to show you what you need to do and you're going to do your job.
Well, I mean, let's look at the Browns coach, Hugh Jackson, when he was in Cincinnati, had one of the best cores ever at linebacker when they were in their heyday.
Yeah.
When they were all together, when everyone was healthy.
Maluga, Vontaze Perfect.
Yeah, that linebacker core scared the crap out of me. So I think if there's any guy that's not Belichick or Bill O'Brien, being someone who learned under Belichick, who can build up a linebacker core very silently and in the background, I think he can do it, and he can teach those guys to play very well. You know what?
And that also goes to the point of he's also a great quarterbacks coach, and that's why I'm saying they don't have to rush this.
They can get anybody.
Yeah, they really could. It just is a testament to, look, they have suffered for so long. And, when you look at it, they have all these draft picks. And, of course, they're going to be mocked because, like I said, they've suffered for so long. But they really have positioned themselves this year and next year to put together a team that could really start coming together and really start challenging people.
Yeah, and I hope they do. Good. I hope the best of luck to the Browns.
I do. So we'll move on from talking about the Browns. Another team that's been thrown in with some draft trades, I guess you could say, is the Tennessee Titans have apparently made the number 5 and the number 18 pick available. And I know you and I were going back and forth, I think last week about, 5 they could go receiver, 18 they could go corner. And I said 5 go corner, 18 go receiver. Are you shocked that they would make both of their picks available?
No, I honestly am not, because if I'm Tennessee, and I think it comes off of what last season was, when they had
a pleasant surprise. I think that's the motto of last year for them, was just a pleasant surprise.
When they traded back, I think they've traded with you guys, I believe, right, for the second pick. Or were they the first last year? No,
they were the first. Yeah, they were the first.
Okay, so they
traded
with
the Rams, and then they traded back again.
Yeah, so they got an abundance of picks for this draft. I think they were under the assumption that DeMarco Murray was going to be a placeholder, that Brian Arakpo was going to be gone, they were going to trade him, they were going to do all these big things because they weren't winning, and they thought that was the case. Going into this season, I think they're a totally different team. DeMarco Murray is running. He is running well.
Behind a good offensive line that they've drafted. I mean, you look at Taylor Lewan and Jack Conklin, I think you already have to throw them in as some of the best tackles in the league.
They have a great line. Their running back is running well. Their quarterback has come out of his sophomore slump and is playing much better. Their receiver core has stepped up. Not to the elite level, but they are playing well, and they can catch the balls that Marcus is throwing. I think that their defense, although they just lost McCourty, they brought in Logan Ryan. So, I mean, 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
And your boy, Jonathan Cyprien.
Yeah, Jonathan Cyprien is there. Arakpo is still around, and I mean, that's a veteran.
They have
somebody who watched him decimate Eli Manning for years.
Yeah, and don't forget, I mean, they have Casey. They have Jarrell Casey on the line. They have Austin Johnson, who's a second-round pick. Kevin Dodd. I think for me, I'm surprised that they'd make the 5th pick available. 18, I totally understand. But here's the reason why I would say 5, and it goes to actually your point. The more I thought about it, I completely forgot about them signing Logan Ryan. So I apologize to Tennessee for that. He's
Logan Ryan.
He's a solid corner. So I thought, when I heard that, and we were going back, and then I remembered Logan Ryan was a Titan, I thought at 5, go get yourself Mike Williams or Corey Davis and get Mariota his bonus.
And I'll throw this out there, not saying that, maybe they are making 5 available. What if they're only making 5 available for the right offer?
I think they'd only make 5 available to entice somebody like Cleveland if they want to jump the Jets to get Trubisky or Watson.
Maybe it's to a team like the Bills, though. Maybe.
Well, you know what? Here's another one for you. There was some belief that Indianapolis wanted to get into the top 10 to take McCaffrey.
Right. So, I mean, you're looking at a bunch of teams now. If I'm Tennessee, hell yeah, I make those 2 picks available. It's like me when I play an NBA franchise on the PS4. I make all my picks available. Let's see who I can get. Let me just take a gander. I don't, maybe I'm not very serious about trading it, but if Indianapolis comes down, and I can go to Indianapolis and say, hey, listen, man, I'll give you 5, but you got to give me Ty. I take.
I don't know if it would be that. Yeah, I don't know if it'd be that as much as it would be maybe they swap 5 and 15, and then maybe the Colts throw in a second or third as well.
If I'm sitting there at Tennessee and teams are coming to me saying I need to get into the top 5, I need to get to the top 5, I hold all the power. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
I think they can pick and choose their offer. I don't even think they trade it. I think they're just fielding their offers. It's when that message pops up and says there are 32 offers for your pick. Do you want to take a look at them? And Titans are just going, yeah, sure, I'll see what everyone else is offering. And if anyone offers up a top tier receiver that they were going to draft anyway, why not? You might get a second plus your top tier receiver. Done. And then they can sit till 18 and then go get their cornerback or whoever they need.
It's an interesting situation because, they could be doing exactly what – and I've played NBA franchises with you. You go through every single trade to see, what you could finesse from somebody. And
Listen,
then it's like,
man,
all right,
it wins.
well, hey, it does. I cannot deny that. But I kind of hope – I really came to like the Titans last year. They have a great O-line. DeMarco Murray came out of – well, he really didn't come out of nowhere. He was just horribly misused by Chip Kelly. But like you said, Mariota really started to come into his own. I kind of hope that they get him a Mike Williams or Corey Davis, because I think if you Mariota, one of those two, to go with Delaney Walker, to go with Derrick Henry, DeMarco, and an up-and-coming defense, the Titans could really push for the South.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that's why I'm saying the 5 is like a perfect situation pick. You know what I mean? It's the pick that you hold on to unless someone's giving you what you exactly need.
Oh, yeah, and I think any pick in the top 10 in this draft has to be at least considered to be available because, you talk about Indianapolis, maybe they want to move up for McCaffrey. I would strongly be opposed to it because I think they need their picks as much as possible. But, if McCaffrey fell or Marshawn Lattimore fell, could the Eagles leapfrog a couple teams to grab a guy that they really like? It's just – I think this draft, and you and I were talking before we went live, I just get a really stingy feeling that tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, I think first 10 picks, maybe even New Orleans at 11, Cleveland at 12. I really think those picks in the top 12, there's going to be a lot of moving. I think there's going to be a lot of moving, and I think there's going to be at least 1 or 2 big surprises.
Unless the perfect deal comes across, I'm going to have to disagree because I think this entire draft has been for high school guys playing a sports franchise on their buddy's PS4 because I think it's always.
I wonder what analogy you're making there.
But you know what I mean. It's everyone's going through their trade finder trying to see what deals they could finesse for 3 hours, and then at the end of the day, everyone's going to sit where they are anyway. Maybe one person trades. One team I could see actually moving is the Jets. That's the only team I could physically, with some confidence, say will probably move. But I would hope
they do because I think they will accumulate more picks. But
right, and I think everyone else is just trying to blow smoke because I think the more smoke you blow, the more you can get some desperate teams to give you some really poor deals in their favor.
And that's why. At least for me, I love the NFL draft because it creates so much intrigue. Like you always hear that, this team met with this player, for a private workout. And, they have the right to meet with 30 players. Each team has the right to meet with 30 players and run them through their own private workout. But you always hear about, this team at number 3. They really, really, really like this guy. But it's like, but does he fit? Is he really like a position in need? It's clearly a smokescreen because
right. You're just trying to make other people nervous.
Exactly. I'll put it in terms of tomorrow. Like pick 6 comes around, and let's just say it goes Myles Garrett to the Browns, Solomon Thomas to the Niners. We'll go Jamal Adams to the Bears, Fournette to the Jags, and then let's just say the Titans stay and take Mike Williams. You could start hearing that the Jets all of a sudden, oh my God, they love Mitch Trubisky. They think that he's going to be the savior of the Jets. Long-awaited quarterback, almost as bad as the Browns. It's a situation like that where then they start doing that, and then the Browns start to panic because maybe they really, really like Trubisky, and then boop, 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 beep, they're calling the Jets and saying, hey, look, here's the 12th pick, here's a second-round pick and a future third-round pick. Swap with us.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the situation that Tennessee is trying to have happen to them. Just so someone real desperate, I don't know what team, I can't even think of a team off the top of my head, could run in there and try to make a last.
I would say I think the Indy situation makes a lot of sense because, like we talked about, I think Luck needs that playmaker in the backfield, and assuming that Fournette does go to the Jags, the next best back available, I believe most people would agree, is Christian McCaffrey.
I would say McCaffrey's better for most teams than Fournette is because Fournette's just a pure runner. For Jacksonville, he's the perfect fit. But for every other team, it's McCaffrey because he can play anything.
Exactly. I mean, if we're talking about a trade-up scenario, I'm looking at it now. Carolina's at 8. They've been rumored with McCaffrey. If he falls to 14 again, the Eagles have been very, very tied to Christian McCaffrey. So if the Colts feel like one of those two teams are going to swipe him, call up the Titans. Give them that 15th pick, give them that second pick.
And now the Titans
a late rounder.
But now the Titans can go get more receivers, so they have less. They have less of a need to kind of like bank all their hopes on one person. They can go get a John Ross and somebody else, or like I forgot, was that Smith-Schuster?
Yeah, Juju Smith-Schuster out of USC. Yeah,
they can go get all those guys and just sit them all down the first day of camp and go, hey, listen, you're all fighting for the same spot. Better work hard, and then you can force the best player to step forward regardless of who that is, and everyone else is just kind of on the team because. So it only works in Tennessee. It always works in Tennessee's favor, and I'm excited to see what they do. But I truly believe that Tennessee will probably stay at 5, just because there's only so much smoke you can blow until someone just goes, you know what, I'm okay. Like when someone sits you down and is like, listen, man, I'll give you my top 3 players for your pick that could either pan out or not. And you're just like, that seems like you're giving me too much.
Yeah, all right. Well, yeah. I mean, it's like either it's going to pan out or it's just going to be, hey, you know what?
We could
we got you. We're going to take our player now.
Right. And I'm sure there's other teams looking at it going, oh, we could trade up with the Titans, and then someone's got to sit down in their war rooms and kind of say, what if he's the next Jamarcus Russell? Like,
well,
like,
not even
that,
but the
biggest flop we ever do.
Yeah, not even that, but you got to be sitting there thinking, don't you think they're doing this so that they take like 2 or 3 of our top picks here?
Right. Or 2 or 3 of our top players.
Oh, yeah. Those are 2, I think, of the most interesting storylines so far in terms of trade and the rumor mill. So I'll ask you, I think this, and I've said it, you've said it, Lewis has said it when he's been with us and not kidnapped.
Damn it, Grimace.
This draft class is loaded, I think, with a ton of defensive talent, whether that be pass rush, linebacker, corner, even safety. And there's a lot of running backs, quarterback and offensive line, historically low this year. Yeah. Receiver, I think there's probably 4 or 5 who are really good. Yeah. And then I think like the next 14 or 15 are quality players. So with that being said, is there a prospect who is getting overlooked or underrated that you think deserves a little bit more attention?
Yeah, absolutely. There's 2 guys that are on my radar that
the more the merrier.
I kind of think they could sneak their way into the bottom of the first round, or maybe even the second round. I don't know. Depends. But I had said his name on the Monday Night Lights show of Lewis's that we both were on Monday. I said this guy in the second round to the Packers, Elijah McGuire from UL in Lafayette. Very underrated guy, plays in a awful conference, plays in that Sun Belt conference. They don't do well. But if you watch the tape of this guy, he is not a 30 touches a game runner. He's just not. And like I said on the show, that's not what Green Bay is looking for. Or a lot of teams like that. There's, like we had said previously in this podcast, it's a throwing heavy quarterback league at this point. This is a guy who could take a lot of pressure off big big throwing games. The Giants, he could take off pressure from Eli. He could take off pressure from a lot of guys. And he is muscular. He is durable. He hasn't gotten hurt since his freshman year of high school. And we talk about this is the closest sport to like a gladiator arena that we have. And you're going to talk about a guy who hasn't gotten hurt since freshman year of high school.
Yeah, no, that's pretty damn impressive.
That's insane. Not even like he hasn't sat out a game since his freshman year. This guy is a workhorse. He will do anything. And I think that people are overlooking him because it's just like, oh, he's just another power back. But like, let's think about the power backs in this league. I mean, yes, you have James Conner as like the big name, because he's calling himself, Beast Mode 2.0. But this is a guy who can be your Brandon Jacobs, your Edgar and James, your guy who's just going to muscle through 10 to 15 tacklers and get you those yards that you really needed. He's not going to break off 80-yard shady runs. He's not. He just can't do it. He just doesn't have the stamina. But when there are 7 men loaded in the box and you need 2 yards to keep your drive alive, I'm going with this guy, and I have no fear putting that play on his shoulders. Yes, he's 5'10". Yes, he's not, he's not some gargantuan physical specimen, but he is strong. He'll keep his legs churning, and he'll get you that first down, which I think is incredibly valuable in this kind of draft class where you have a lot of showmakers and, people who are looking for that flashy spin move. This is a guy who's going to put his head down and, almost Forrest Gump it, and not he's not going to stop running until he either hits the end of the end zone or someone tells him to stop. And then someone else I was looking at is Brad Kaya out of Miami.
Okay, yeah, and especially when you talk about Watson, Mahomes, Trubisky, even Kaiser, it's easy to forget that Brad Kaya's in this draft too.
Yeah, Brad Kaya. I mean, yes, not the elite level quarterback that everyone's kind of looking at, but when I watch him play, he reminds me a lot of a Aaron Rodgers sort of situations. Not in a player way, but in a similar situation where he could be drafted. This is a guy who can go second round to a team that already has an established quarterback, possibly a New Orleans, possibly a KC or a Arizona, and he's just going to learn. He's going to learn for 2, 3, 4 years. And then when it's all said and done and that quarterback that he's under leaves, this guy's going to step up and immediately take over a system that he already knows very well, and he's going to do really well with it. Brad Kaya's best year at Miami was this year because he had spent 4 years learning the playbook. And I think he's not going to go to a team and do well if he's thrown in and given the book right away and said, hey, you start in 5 weeks. He's going to flop, and I think that's guaranteed. But if you give him a year to learn his playbook and learn his personnel, I think he'll do fantastic, and I think that he'll end up being a top-level quarterback in the NFL given the right situation.
Yeah, I mean, hey, a lot of attention goes to Watson, Trubisky, Mahomes kind of being the top 3, and then, Kaiser, and, I really like that logic. I think there was a time when quarterbacks were drafted and could easily be thrown in. The Peyton Mannings, the Roethlisbergers, Eli's, but and we keep going. But last year's draft with Goff and Wentz, those guys were, like I said, if you had told me at this time last year that Carson Wentz was going to be starting all 16 games, and that Jared Goff was even going to start at all, I would have said you're freaking nuts. I mean, those guys were drafted on the premise that they were going to learn. They were going to learn the system. They were going to get familiar with the playbook. For better or for worse, they showed up and played in their first season. But I've really started to adapt to the mindset that you don't need to rush and take the quarterback. I mean, how many quarterbacks are Andrew Lucks or Russell Wilsons or Drew Brees, Manning? The list goes on and on.
1 or 2 a year. That's it.
Exactly. And, this draft, I know there's a lot of criticism with some of the quarterbacks coming out, but, it's the perfect situation where any one of these guys, especially Kaya, can come in and just learn for a year or two and get used to the system, get used to the audibles, the line changes, the receivers. I got to give you a lot of props. I really like that Kaya, and I have not heard the name of that running back. So
You got
that had to take some research.
watch his film and watch the amount of men it takes to tackle a 5'10", 215-pound man. I mean, this guy is a horse, and it just impresses me to no end. Because I hadn't heard about him until I started researching for the Monday Night Lights draft, and I was like, oh man, second round, best running back available. Who is it? And actually, someone I really don't agree with most days, Charlie Casserly, actually had brought his name up. So I started watching his film and saying, oh, how good is this kid? And he blew me away. And so like,
if you're a hard man to please,
especially when Charlie Casserly is involved. But he really impressed me, and I immediately thought Edgar and James, Brandon Jacobs, when I saw this guy, and he's the next generation of power running that the NFL kind of desperately needs, because we're in an era of speed. And just I always like the guys who can get you 3-4 yards but can knock over 6 guys doing it.
Yeah, I think for me, and I actually, funny enough, brought him up on that Monday Night Light show as well. You look at this guy, and you just immediately, when you look at his measurables, you're blown away. I mean, this is a man we're talking about, not like a superhuman. He's 6'8", 290, and he's a defensive end. And when you look at him, he's just a force. He's strong. He's quick. He does need some learning, and I don't think that he can be a day one starter. He's more of a day 2, day 3 pick who can learn under, an established defensive end, or, he could be a system player, I think, preferably in a 4-3. But Tano Capassanon from Villanova, and it's like, well, who the hell does Villanova produce? I mean, other than Brian Westbrook. But I think if somebody's looking for a defensive end that can disrupt, the pass plays with batted balls, who can stuff the run, who is just a physical freak, and if taught properly could really be one of the deals of this draft, it's got to be him. I mean, how many 6'8", 290-pound defensive ends are there in the league? I mean, we're talking about Myles Garrett. He's 6'4", 272. This guy's 4 inches taller and 18 pounds heavier. And he's just as quick. He's just as good at stuffing the run. But I think he's one of those guys that if he is put in the right system and can learn, you're talking about a guy who could really be a force in the league.
Yeah, and I think a lot of I looked at him a little bit after you mentioned him on that show, and
because I'm sure all of you were sitting there thinking I either picked him because he was a Villanova product or because of the.
No, I thought you picked him because of the size. I think the size attracted you immediately when you had seen how tall he was and how big he was.
For our viewers, Lewis's show that he does with good friend Tim Hoffmeister, Monday Night Lights for DeSales University, I had him going to the Miami Dolphins. And basically the logic behind it was that he could learn behind Ndamukong Suh and Cameron Wake, who I think should be equated as one of the best ends of this generation and one of the best defensive tackles in the last decade.
Yeah,
and, when you look at a guy who's 6'8", 290, what better way to learn from than, a speed rusher like Cam Wake and just a physical freak like Ndamukong Suh.
But my immediate concern is, and this is, me just being skeptical, nothing against this man or your pick. When you immediately had said it, I thought like a situation where he can either be, 18 pounds heavier of pure muscle, or he could be 18 pounds heavier of I'm going to fall down and not get back up.
No, I mean, if you look at him, it's muscle.
Yeah, so I looked him up and I was like, holy crap, this man is huge. I just, I think he has fallen and not to the Myles Garrett. He's not at the Myles Garrett level because he's not as versatile. But I think you're absolutely right. I think he is a guy who can make a huge difference. I honestly believe that he would do much better in a 4-3 than a 3-4.
Yeah, no,
I think
that's
if he's that second D end, I think he would be an insane addition to any 4-3 team that could. And as a Giants fan, since that Jonathan Hankins is no longer with the Giants, if he wants to come and play in Big Blue, I'm down. I'm down. I'll have if I can have snacks in that guy, hell yeah, I'm playing that game.
Yeah, I better tell Carson Wentz to or Howard Roseman to draft all offensive linemen from that point on if that's going to be the case. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of players I really like. Now there's a lot of players I really don't like. And look, one player, he comes in with red flags, but I'm not even going to bring that up. But one player I'm a little down on, and he's been associated with the Eagles a lot, is Dalvin Cook. I look at Dalvin Cook, and yeah, I think he's going to be a fantastic running back in this league. But there's a lot of injury concerns with him, and you could even get into the conversation of the off the field stuff that he's brought in. But some of the injury concerns, I think if you're taking him, you have to throw caution in the wind with it. It's almost like you're flipping a coin and hoping heads or tails. You're flipping a coin on this guy, hoping he can stay healthy and be what Florida State, which is almost like an Ezekiel Elliott, David Johnson type of runner, or is you're going to take him in the top 20 and you're going to have to deal with injury problems. So, we talked about who we thought was underrated. I think somebody overrated, and actually I wouldn't be surprised if he slipped to the second round. Would be Dalvin Cook. So is there anybody on your radar who you think is being overrated or talked about too much that you could see slipping?
Yeah, there's a few guys. Right off the bat, my number one overrated guy is Chad Kelly from Ole Miss. Think of when I watch him play or I've watched him in the past, he reminds me immediately of a Zach Mettenberger sort of situation.
Leave him alone. He was a great Madden 25 edition.
Right, but that guy could bomb the ball down the field, and that's what attracted so many teams to him. And the same with Chad Kelly. But you look at it, there's very little accuracy. It's kind of just throw the ball up to my receivers and hope they catch it. And I think he profited from having, the DBs in college are not always the best because you're not throwing against the best of the best at all times. But he's not a first round pick. He's definitely a second or a third. But any team that picks him up, and think, hey, he's going to throw the ball a few times. I think he's going to get a rude awakening real quick and get picked off by a lot of safeties who are going to play him like a center fielder and take. Yeah,
I think he might be more of a 5'6" or even a 7 just because he's coming off a serious knee injury.
Yeah, but there's coming off the injury, and that's a concern as well. But he has been adamant saying he'll be ready to play by the beginning of camp.
I hear what you're saying, and I
like his style, and I think there's too much risk to him, and he needs to be groomed too much for the amount of time that people are saying, "Oh, but he'll be ready. His body will be ready. His game won't be."
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's a quarterback you would want to take in the 5th or 6th and just stash away, and while letting him get healthy, he can learn under a proven quarterback.
Yeah, and there's just two other guys. Jake Butt out of Michigan. I think benefited from Harbaugh's system there a little bit too much. I don't think he's actually that good of a tight end. People have looked at him as that kind of third option in that tight end race. If you don't get O.J. Howard and you don't get Nkemdiche, you can get this guy.
David Njoku.
Yeah, David Njoku. David Njoku. You can get Jake Butt. I don't think he's that good. I think he benefited from Harbaugh. I think it's almost like a Dennis Pitta situation, where Dennis Pitta outside of that scheme is an atrocious tight end, but in that scheme he's great. And then another guy, J.J. Dielman from Utah. People have been talking about him as kind of this big center that can move people out of the way. And I don't know. I always, when I look at Dielman play, I just think, who's he right next to? Oh yeah, Garrett Bowles. So it's like, how much pressure did Dielman really have to go through when Garrett Bowles was pushing men out of the way right next to him? So I think he's a little bit too high on everyone's kind of that 4th, 5th round draft boards, because I just don't think he's that good. I believe that he should have probably stayed in college for that last year, because I think he went in with Bowles thinking, the both of us can get drafted. But I think Garrett Bowles is the real superstar of that line and not him.
Yeah, good point. So we'll move on. I guess you'll fly solo on this one. What are your final thoughts? Your final thoughts heading into this weekend? Whether that be what you want them to do, what you don't want them to do, any moves you'd want them to make, in regards to your New York Giants.
It's tough. Because I've seen a lot of different things from a lot of different mock drafts.
I think that's the motto of this mock season.
Depending on who falls to where and all that stuff. But if you're going to put me in the shoes of the New York Giants general manager and say who you would pick with that number, I believe we're 21 this
23.
year. We're 23 this year. I think you got to go O-line, wherever that is, whether it's Ramczyk, Bowles, Forrest Lamp has been thrown around. I think O.J. Howard is also, I'll throw tight ends in that O-line discussion.
Yeah, not to interrupt, but I thought, I think and this is coming from an Eagles fan, I think what would make the Giants a stronger team is O-line because, you guys have had some problems on the left side of your line. But when I look at it, if he falls to 23 and you have a core of Odell Beckham, Brandon Marshall, Sterling Shepard in the slot, and you have O.J. Howard, I mean, you're talking about a team that immediately puts up 30, 40 points a game.
Yeah, and that's
it's
always
that I look at that as an Eagles fan whose team's defense is rebuilding. Dallas's defense is rebuilding. Washington's defense is rebuilding. I mean, that's an offense that could really take advantage of a weak division's defense.
Right, and I just think, it's best player available on an O-line, whether that's a tight end on the O-line or whether that's an O-lineman. Because, if Howard is there, take him. Absolutely take him. But I wouldn't really want anybody else at 23. You know what I mean? At 23, and Howard is already gone, I'd look for an O-lineman to shore up that left side of the line. Bobby Hart did an okay job out there last year, but I need someone that's going to stop it and shut it down because you have Pugh and Richburg and, on the other side.
Fluker, who you guys signed.
Fluker, on the right side, that makes me real happy that Eli's not going to get hit on the right. But on the left, I'm still worried about it, so I'd rather, get someone over there that can hold the hole and kind of make sure that we don't run into any issues going forward. For me, it's got to be someone that's going to be in front of Eli Manning, whether that's someone that's going to bail him out when pressure starts coming, like an O.J. Howard, or someone that's going to make sure the pressure never comes, like a lineman.
So is there any – if there was to be a trade with the Giants, where do you think you could see them getting involved?
I could see them jumping.
Whether that be draft picks, swapping picks, or maybe even pulling the trigger on adding a veteran in the draft.
Ever since the Adrian Peterson signing 2 days ago, there have been a lot of talks between LeGarrette Blount and the New York Giants as him coming into being a power threat, kind of doing that old Earth, Wind, and Fire routine that used to from a couple years ago with Ahmad Bradshaw and Brandon Jacobs, having Paul Perkins and LeGarrette Blount, with Shane Vereen catching passes out of the backfield as well. And there was a lot of, with that being said, again, if there's something I would like to trade for, I'd like to trade we do make a pick at 23, I'd like to trade back up into that second round, maybe the top 10 of that second round, and, get either another lineman or get, maybe another defensive back to kind of another person to be under Eli Apple. Because you can never have enough defensive backs because people get hurt. And just get another supplemental piece that could really make me confident going into next season.
Yeah, I mean, I failed to mention at the beginning, first off, Marshawn Lynch getting traded to the Raiders.
Getting traded, then signing. It was a very weird situation.
Yeah, and then, of course, Adrian Peterson signing with the Saints. And I mentioned this on Lewis's show, but week 1, Saints at the Vikings. So AP goes back to Minnesota week 1.
Saints, Vikings week 1, and Packers, Seahawks week 1.
Very, very weird. Yeah.
So
Eddie Lacy gets to face the Packers.
Eddie Lacy gets to face the team that cut him, essentially, and then Adrian Peterson gets to face his old team as well. And the comments coming from the Vikings office varied from what the Vikings players had to say about Adrian Peterson.
It was just
I'm excited for that matchup.
It was an extremely weird situation, I think.
It's because you had people like Danielle Hunter being like, hey, man, great I got to play with you. Wish you the best of luck and, wherever you go and everything like that. Then you had like Anthony Barr and Everson Griffin rip him apart about like how much of an a-hole he was for leaving. And then you had the front office being like, greatest man ever put on the purple and white ever. So like,
there's you never know what goes on behind closed doors, but ever since that whole incident with his son, it just became a very weird situation.
Yeah.
And, to go back to the Giants, I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it again, and I'm going to say it on every show that we ever do. Going forward to, kick off 2017 is, as an Eagles fan, I'm scared the most of the Giants in this division. And I'm not saying that because I hate the Cowboys the most. I'm not trying to disrespect them as much as I hate them. But, you're looking at the Giants who have a top 10 defense. You're looking at the Giants who have a Hall of Fame quarterback. You look at the Giants who have one of the best receivers in the game in Odo. They add Brandon Marshall, who even at 32 years old can still get it done and is still a big target for Eli, especially in the red zone. I feel like you guys can really do no wrong at 23. You could go linebacker. You could get another pass rusher. I mean, the Giants won 2 rings off of having a consistent pass rushing guys that they can rotate in and out. Like you and Lewis have joked, your linebacking core is atrocious. Right. Maybe they want to address that. And I mean, the Giants can only get stronger out of this draft. And that, I think, is what I fear the most out of, the 3 teams that the Eagles will be facing. You talk about Dallas, Dak and Zeke, but they lost 2 very important pieces on their line. Their defense is extremely thin on pass rusher and in the secondary. Washington, I don't know what the hell is going on with Kirk Cousins. They have no run game. Their offensive line is, they don't have a center. They don't have a left guard. Their pass rush is just as bad as Dallas's, and they have safety needs. So, if the NFC East is truly going to come down to 2 teams like it usually does, I could see it being the Eagles and Giants, but I would. Right now, I'd give the nod to the Giants just based on the pieces that you guys have and, how you can continue to build through this draft.
Yeah, and I going off of that, I'll ask you, what do you think that the Eagles need to do? Because you guys are in a middle spot, and people are saying they need to go running back, they need to go corner. What do you think they have to do?
I have been conflicted on this in September because, I would call into Lewis's show and, his co-host Tim Hoffmeister, who's another Eagles fan, he and I were on the corner bandwagon from day one. And then you start hearing names, Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey, Corey Davis, O.J. Howard even. This team has needs. There's no denying that. And there are so many mock drafts out there and so many different analysis of what they're going to do. They could go running back at 14 as long as it's not Joe Mixon or Dalvin Cook. If it's McCaffrey or if Fournette falls, fine. They could go receiver because you know what? You look at it, Alshon Jeffrey, while he did sign a 1-year deal, and I do believe that he will be here long term. I think the 1-year deal was a prove-it deal so that he can, really show that the injuries and the PED suspension last year was a fluke, that he really wants to be here with a young quarterback who, the sky's the limit for. Torrey Smith, I think it's a nice upgrade. I think, he'll be all right. But beyond that, it's Jordan Matthews, Nelson Aguilar, and Dorial Green-Beckham, who were kind of the reason we were 7-9 last year. And you look at it, we're thin at pass rusher. They made an addition with Chris Long, who I think can provide some good veteran leadership. Will definitely get you a couple sacks, and I really like the fact that he's going to push Vinny Curry on the side opposite Brandon Graham. They made the trade to get Timmy Jernigan, who's one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league after they lost Benny Logan. Jordan Hicks has started to come into his own as a linebacker. Nigel Bradham had a decent year last year, but, do I even need to talk about the corners? I think we all know that that's a disaster. And, they have competent – yeah, they had 2 competent safeties. So the thing with the Eagles at 14, I'm not opposed to them. And see, I know you want a conclusive answers to what I think they should do, but at 14, I'm not opposed to them going with an offensive weapon for Carson Wentz. And I think a lot of people are starting to warm up to the idea that if Mike Williams falls to 14 or if Corey Davis is there at 14, get another receiver for Carson Wentz. Assuming that Alshon does stay here long term and stays healthy, you have Alshon Jeffrey and you have, let's say, Corey Davis and you have Zach Ertz. I think that is far and away much better than what he had a year ago. But, look, if a Marlon Humphrey or somehow if Marshawn Lattimore falls to 14, you really have to consider shoring up the secondary once and for all. Because, like I said, look at your receiving core with Odell and Brandon Marshall. Look at Dallas with Dez Bryant and Cole Beasley. Look at Washington now with Terrell Pryor, Jamison Crowder, Josh Doxson, and look at the teams that the Eagles have to play this year. You have to face Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. We have to face Amari Cooper, Michael Crabtree, Kelvin Benjamin. At 14, if they want to go with a receiver, like I said, unless it's Mike Williams or Corey Davis, I don't want John Ross. I don't want Juju Smith-Schuster at 14. I think that's got Nelson Aguilar written all over it. And we've seen how that panned out. So, for me, this draft is really, and I've said it 100 times on the show. I've said it to basically anyone who's talked NFL draft with me. I think it's indicative of the future for the Eagles, that if Carson Wentz is going to succeed, if this team is even going to have a hope of sustaining wins in the division and keeping up with the Giants and Cowboys, if they're even going to have a hope of making it and winning a Super Bowl, you do need your weapons for Carson Wentz, but you do need a defense. So I'll conclude that little rant by saying my ideal situation for the Eagles is at 14, get your receiver. That's fine. Like I said, unless it's not Mike Williams or Corey Davis, but I'm going to assume, let's say Corey Davis is there at 14. Round 2, I'm going to take a corner. I really like Sidney Jones, even though, he's coming off of that torn Achilles. The doctor that performed his surgery did say he is expected to be back in 4 to 6 months. If he makes a full recovery, that guy has number 1 corner written all over him. In round 3, I'm taking another corner. Tease Tabor could be there. A lot of people are scared off of his 40 time being a 4.7, which is pitiful for a corner. But, if you look at the tape, the guy's just a complete shutdown corner. And that's what the Eagles need. Is they need a guy who can at least contain Brandon Marshall, Bryant, and, Odell and Terrell Pryor. But I do want to address the elephant in the room, which is the idea of Dalvin Cook or Joe Mixon. And, I didn't know that Jalen Mills and Dorial Green Beckham had similar cases.
Yeah, they've had their demons too, and I mean both of them have moved on since coming to the team.
They have, and I think the case of Jalen Mills, it was dropped, and I'm not really sure about Dorial Green Beckham because I didn't even know that he was coming in with it.
I believe his was settled. I don't think it was dropped. I think it was settled.
Okay. When I'm looking at this team, I'm looking at, obviously the face of the team is Carson Wentz. And if you don't know anything about Carson Wentz, he's a humble guy. He's a Christian guy. He's a hard worker.
He is Tim Tebow without the writing under his eyes.
He's the redhead Tim Tebow. Only, I hope, much better on the field. But
I don't know. One good season Team Tebow had.
All right. Shut up, you Giants fan.
I was cheering for Tebow. Don't say that.
Hey, I was too. I can't get myself to root for a team or for a player with that magnitude and that background coming in. And, it's funny because just to play devil's advocate, my buddy the other day was saying, well, you were one of Michael Vick's biggest fans. And yes, I was. But Michael Vick served his time.
Did his penance. He
did. He lost all of his money. He lost all of his endorsements and was basically the Satan of the NFL. And the Eagles took a chance on him. And they have a very, I don't want to say good, I don't think it's the right word. They have a long track record of taking chances on players with questionable backgrounds. The reason why I'm saying no to Mixon, absolutely no, and I think Dalvin Cook has at least apologized for what he did. Joe Mixon has done no such thing. He, even in a press conference a couple months ago, was with his PR guy, and one of the reporters asked him, did you learn from your situation? And Mixon's response was, what do you mean? What did I learn? What are you talking about? To me, that doesn't show anything. Like, I can tell you the day Michael Vick made a conference when he signed with the Eagles, there were tears in his eyes. And this was a guy to me that looked like he had learned from everything that had happened, And you're talking about a guy that went so far as to drown dogs and electrocute them, burn them, and put them in, dogfighting situations, which is it's volatile. Speaking as a dog owner, I know you're a dog owner, and Lewis is a dog owner. I mean, you think about that, that's horrible. But he was a guy who, like you said, served his penance and showed remorse, and it went around on tours to speak about how volatile of an act that is. And then, in 2010, teamed up with Chase Utley and his wife, who were big members of the ASPCA. And, that was a guy who really started to go out into the community and speak about how terrible that was and how he had learned from that. What the fuck has Joe Mixon done to show that he has learned from this?
Well, I just looked it up right now, and not to cut you off, but I think this adds to your
point.
No,
go ahead, because I think I was rambling on for a while.
No, but I think this adds to your point about Joe Mixon. I just Googled Joe Mixon's name, and the top 20 links that all come up are all about his stats and where he's going to land in the draft off his ability to play. And nothing about the case or how remorseful he is or anything like that, or how he's going to do better or how he's going to counseling or anything like that. Which I think I don't know for sure, but I'm sure if you Google Mike Vick, at least the third thing that comes up is his dogfighting case. And
yeah,
it almost makes it feel like it's like the NFL where we value a dog's life more than someone else's.
Well, and look, and when we make that argument with some people, they want to say, well, sin is sin. I mean, I agree. I
absolutely agree.
I could never imagine my dogs or anybody's dogs being put through that. But the problem, and yes, look, I'm not going to take it away from him. I've seen the guy play. I mean, I've watched Oklahoma games. Joe Mixon is a very good running back, and many believe that he's actually the best player in this draft. But, look at the history of the NFL in the last 5 years. Ray Rice, Greg Hardy, Josh Brown. Yeah. They have done such a bullshit, mediocre job in handling domestic violence that it almost seems like they just slap him on the wrist and the guy gets to go up this weekend, gets drafted by a team, makes millions of dollars, and we're all supposed to just forget about it because there's wins and losses. Let me put it to you this way. There was an article in Bleeding Green Nation, which is an Eagles website, saying that, the Eagles should take Joe Mixon because of his talent. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, when is there a line drawn with talent
the line
and morals?
That says, yes, you're talented, but you're also a despicable human being?
Where is the line? Because, Steelers fans wanted to oust Ben Roethlisberger, but then when he won a Super Bowl, won his second Super Bowl, the team's sixth, everybody forgot about it.
But everyone, think about in any sport, I mean, Kobe Bryant changed his number. And yes, he did other things to fix it later, and I'm not going to take that away from him. But his immediate reaction was, I'll change my number. Why does that matter?
I guess he felt like it was a new him. Right. I guess he felt like that was going to be a new him. But,
I'll shave my head and change my number. Like, no.
But to me, I mean, I really wanted to comment on that site, and I don't get involved in social media arguments because it's for children.
It's worthless to do it.
You're sitting there thinking, dude, like, if this guy had socked your wife, your daughter, or your mother, would you be saying, oh, let the Eagles draft him because if he wins, what does it matter?
Right.
And that's the problem that the NFL has is it's like, I've tweeted this, I Facebooked this, and I've written this because I really do feel strongly about this. The NFL went after Tom Brady and made it seem like he was this evil human being for deflating a fucking football. But Joe Mixon socks a girl in the face and breaks her orbital bone, and we're all just supposed to forget about it because there's, if he rushes for 2,000 yards and 15 touchdowns, Eagles fans are going to say, forget about it.
Well, here's my thing with it. When is it in any sport? You look at domestic violence in any sport that is in the United States. I mean, you talk about Jose Reyes. You talk about Aroldis Chapman. And I'll take a blow at the Yankees for signing him. Was a terrible. I didn't want him to be a Yankee at all when he first came over. Because, there's got to be a line where you sit down and you just go, yes, they're winning me games, but he hasn't done anything to atone for the fact that he hit a human being. He hit another human being.
I mean, he hit a woman. It's like, look, let me just say this.
There's a different, I won't even say the woman thing because if like the Jay-Z, everyone remembers the Jay-Z thing in the elevator, where Beyonce's, I think, cousin or sister or something started physically assaulting him in an elevator, and he did nothing because he said, if I threw any punches, even to defend myself, I'd be criticized for the rest of my life. And he's right, for better or for worse. You hit a human being. Man, woman, I don't care. You hit a human being who did not provoke you first.
Yeah, and you know what? Here's the thing, too. You bring up a great point, is if you look at the Joe Mixon video, this woman was provoking him, and there's all these witnesses saying, well, she started it. I don't really care. You are a grown man. You are much, much bigger than she is. You need to understand that as a man, walk away. What is it going to show that you're such a tough guy, that you socked a woman in the face? I actually give so much credit to Jay-Z. Look, if a woman's pushing you and hitting you, why can't you just walk away?
Well, for the Jay-Z thing, he was locked in an elevator, so he had no chance. There was no walking away from that unless he started slapping buttons. But you know what I mean? For me, and this is just if I was in Joe Mixon's shoes, the woman is yelling at me and provoking me to try to get me to do something. I'm gonna try to walk away or defuse the situation. But I'll be honest.
Sounds so juvenile, but it's just so easy at the same time.
But I'll be completely honest. If the Jay-Z thing happened to me, where this woman attacks me in an elevator, I am going to defend myself. Am I going to physically assault her to the point where it's not me defending myself anymore? Absolutely not. But I'm going to put myself in a situation where I can no longer be hurt. You know what I mean?
Right.
Joe Mixon was never hit by that woman.
He was pushed. He was pushed.
Right. But if Joe Mixon, if that woman had come up and punched Joe Mixon in the jaw, and he retaliated by throwing her down, I would be like, that's fine, because she punched you in the jaw. You just try to get her away from it. But
even still, I think
you can't.
There are.
Well, let's do it this way. If there's a woman, and yes, stereotypically, men are larger than women, but if Ronda Rousey comes up and punches me in the face, I don't care what she is. I'm going to try to defend myself because I'm going to die either way.
Well, I would be surprised if you weren't dead by the first punch.
Right. But if there's a physically active, if there's an athlete girl, a girl's lacrosse player who punches me in the face, I'm just going to go, I need to not die here, so I'm not going to worry about social justice in this scenario.
And look,
I'm going to try to not die.
There are ways where you can, you can hold her hand or do something that just doesn't involve.
If it comes down to this is just for me, I'm not saying everyone else has to go by these guidelines. But if you're any gender of a person and you hit another person physically, like you hit them with a closed fist, you think you have no right to not expect the other person to hit you back. I think you've lost that right.
And look, there are ways to defend yourself without taking it a step to where you completely obliterate that person.
Yeah, I'm not going to obliterate that person, but I'm going to make sure that person can't hurt me anymore.
To go back to the Mixon issue, this girl was pushing him, and he punches her and breaks her orbital bone.
Yeah, no.
Now,
what he did
I like
wrong.
Yeah, I like how she at least admitted that they both could have handled it differently, but there's been nothing from him. There has been nothing from him. And look, like you said, and I'm going to say it again, there needs to be a line drawn with wins in the NFL and morals of life. And you know what? The other thing, too, is this is only going to continue in the NFL if they don't put a stop to it. And right. Putting a stop to it is not these little no more commercials. Like, yeah, sure, it gets the issue out there. It gets people talking. But you really want to send a message? You don't allow this player in the NFL. Point blank. I think that is the only solution. Because look, you can. I related it to, as odd as it sounds, I related to a little boy in the cookie jar. Little boy's going to keep reaching for the cookie jar before dinner because you know what? He wants his cookie. And mom can hide the jar. She can go through all these methods, but little boy is going to find that cookie jar. He's going to find a way to get that cookie. You don't stop him from getting his chocolate chip cookie. How dare you? But so how do you put a stop to it altogether? You just don't have a cookie jar.
Well, you put him the right way when it happens.
Exactly. You don't slap a little 1-game suspension or 2-game suspension on a player who beats a woman then turn around and say,
I'll suggest this to you. And I know it's not a perfect fix, but we'll let this kind of be the theoretical fix to the problem. If the NFL lets Joe Mixon in, whatever team drafts him, Eagles, no matter, I don't care who it is, but says he cannot step foot on the field and dress until there is a police investigation and he is either convicted or acquitted of these crimes.
Well, no. I'll take you a step further. Martavis Bryant was just reinstated by the NFL. Martavis Bryant, wide receiver of the Pittsburgh Steelers, was just reinstated by the NFL. And for those who may not know, has had a lot of run-ins with marijuana use.
Well, that's
Roger
different.
Goodell
I think anyone who gets suspended for that's dumb. That's just dumb to be suspended for that.
But here's my point. You'll see where I'm going with this. He was reinstated on the condition that he cannot step into a Steelers practice facility, Steelers practice, or training camp until he finds a rehabilitation center. So if you want to set up a provocative where Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook, or whoever else, my provocative would be taking it a step further and saying they cannot play a down in the NFL until they go to some kind of anger management or some kind of help.
Let's say that they're convicted and that's the case. But I'm saying just as a preliminary thing,
that's a preliminary thing.
Well, take Chad Kelly, because we mentioned him before, right? Chad Kelly gets into the league, he starts playing, and there's an allegation that he sexually assaulted some girl, right? I wouldn't suspend him right away because there could be a chance that let's let the investigation go. Let's have him get off the field, away from the limelight until someone comes back and says, yes, he did it, or no, he didn't. And if he did, have him serve his sentence and then go to therapy for it. But if he didn't do it, let him go back to playing because he obviously did nothing wrong. And that's got to be the situation. Just sit him on the sidelines until they figure out what happened.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And interestingly enough, this has happened to a draft prospect, Gary Conley of Ohio State, who many believe is one of the top-rated corners. It just came out a couple days ago that he raped a woman. And, look, you can never, ever, ever dismiss something like that because it is such a serious. But, look, there's two ways of looking at it. This guy's about to enter the NFL, and he's going to make a lot of money. And he's going to be a very good player, So some believe, could this be a hoax because given that situation? And there have been situations like that. But again, I'm not sitting here saying immediately
they're a minority, but they do happen.
Right. And I'm not sitting here saying that that's immediately what's happening because we don't have all the facts yet. And then, with that being said, he could have done this and, then that completely ruins it. But with the case of sexual assault and domestic violence, I don't want to hear 1 or 2 game suspension. No. Deactivate the player. You deactivate him completely. He doesn't practice. He doesn't practice. He doesn't show up to games. Then you investigate, and then it's, even if the guy's clean, I would rather the NFL take the necessary precautions of getting the facts instead of just, it's a 1-game suspension. You can go back. And then it turns out to be, he actually did it. No, now here's your suspension.
But no. I'd rather deactivate him, let him go home, let him get his lawyers together, whatever he needs to do. Because the investigation happens. If he's guilty, he serves his sentence. He leaves the game like Vic did. And if he's innocent, let him back. He's now playing football.
You bring up a good point about him stepping away, because think about it. This starts to become a team issue now. Now it's going to affect the team and the coach.
Think about what Harbaugh did with Ray Rice. He was like, "Get out of here. I don't want to see you again."
Exactly. You're going to affect the team. You're going to affect moral. You're going to affect. There's a domino effect. So to tie this all back together, because I think this was a great discussion, but I just cannot root for a team that cares more about wins than they do about the character of their players. And, we can joke all we want about Chip Kelly and that bullshit character nonsense, that he got rid of Deshaun Jackson because he was a part of some gang and didn't want to draft players that even had the slightest red flag. He wanted, good church boys and whatnot.
Good wholesome boys.
Yeah, good wholesome Southern boys. But, I really.
No, I agree with you. I think if
yeah,
it comes
and look,
out.
If he comes into the NFL and he actually shows remorse and, apologizes for what he did and shows that he's sorry for it, then you know what? That's where I can be at peace with it. This would be a totally different situation if Joe Mixon was donating money to a battered women's shelter like he said he would and hasn't done and actually apologized. Then I would say, you know what?
Or
take a chance on
if it
him.
comes out at 5 o'clock, 5 p.m. tomorrow, and it says he's been found innocent.
There's video
right.
of it. There's
right.
video. Well,
or anybody.
He found innocent.
Dalvin Cook found innocent, or Garyon Conley. If it comes out that Garyon Conley, it's like, yeah, no, that was a hoax. At 5 p.m., someone in a criminal justice background says he's innocent. I think all bets are off. Garyon Conley is off to the races. Go make your millions, buddy.
Yeah, but
until then, let's put a hold on everything.
Right. This is just such a delicate situation in not only the NFL but in society that, if like I said, go back and watch. I ask our viewers, go back and watch the day that Michael Vick signed with the Eagles. You can have whatever opinion you have on him. This was a guy I remember because I took off of work that morning to watch it. He had watered eyes. You could hear the shakiness in his voice. And you can hear just how disturbed he felt that he knew that this had all come out and it had ruined his life. But that was the guy who showed remorse from day one. And that's why I accepted him because and loved him as much as I did, not only as an Eagle, but as a person, is that he rebuilt his life. And have you ever heard a peep out of Michael Vick since?
No.
Nope. No. I mean, he stayed perfectly clean. And if Joe Mixon had done the same exact penance as Michael Vick, I would say Eagles at 14, go get him. But because he's done absolutely nothing to prove his sincerity and his sorriness to the situation, I cannot get behind a team that cares more about wins than they do the character of their players, given this. But with all that finally being said, I would like the Eagles to take a running back. One guy I do have on the radar that you brought up a little while ago was James Conner. I think he has a really interesting story, especially he beat leukemia. He's like 6'2", 250. And, a lot of stories have gone out that the Eagles really like him. Now, I can get behind the story of a guy beating cancer much more than I can get behind a guy of domestic violence. So if the Eagles want to take a running back, take James Conner. But if you have anything more to add about the draft itself or, our little Joe Mixon rant and –
No, I mean, I'm excited for tomorrow, and I'm excited to see what happens with all those picks that are supposedly up for grabs. I know Mayock is doing his mock draft right now, and it looks real bad. I mostly disagree with him because Mike Williams is going to the Eagles.
Yes.
But explain to me how he drops 14 picks. I don't know.
Well, I guess if I'm looking at it real quick,
I just think how does anyone?
Does he have the Titans going corner?
Oh no, he has them picking John Ross over him.
Really?
Yeah. So
that's got to be because Rashard Matthews is more of a possession receiver, and John Ross would give him a deep threat where Mariota can just heave it.
Right, but I mean, it's just for me, Mayock has never actually made any sense to me ever. So
really?
Yeah, no, not once, not ever.
Besides
the obvious ones.
He's one of the few analysts I really love to listen to, especially when it comes to the draft, because he knows these prospects.
Right, but he has obviously Myles Garrett goes 1, Jamal Adams goes 2. You go down the list. He has McCaffrey going to the Panthers, Jonathan Allen going to the Bengals, Reuben Foster going to the Bills. But as it gets down the list, it's like John Ross before before Corey Davis and Mike Williams, John Ross goes.
That's interesting.
Like,
I mean, I wouldn't argue with that if that happened.
I'm not saying it's impossible.
Mike Williams, baby.
I'm not saying it's impossible, but from the Eagles and Titans standpoint, there is so much more that the Eagles need than a receiver, and there is so much more that you can get instead of John Ross. I mean, John Ross is great, don't get me wrong, but I'd rather have Corey Davis over John Ross any day.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree. But like I said, if you want to go with wide receiver and give Wentz one final piece to that receiving core, Mike Williams is a very hard talent to pass up. And again, this draft, like I said, I think there's about 3 or 4 stud receivers, and the rest are going to be quality to adequate players. And, I don't want them to rush the running back position at 1 or 2. If I'm in the first round and second round, I'd rather them go 2 corners off the bat or go receiver and corner.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've never been able to agree with Mayock, but because I think he drafts on best player available, and I like to draft on need based. So me and him just have 2 different strategies.
And that's need based can get you into trouble sometimes, because I feel like let's look at the Chargers real quick with that theory, because I actually think that's a good topic of discussion for the last 5 minutes or so. You look at the Chargers. I'm on NFL.com right now. One of the needs they have listed is receiver. Now, that might be because Keenan Allen's coming off a torn ACL and because Phillip Rivers needs more weapons. But, I think it would be a reach if they took Mike Williams or Corey Davis and didn't address their secondary. That maybe if Jamal Adams or Malik Hooker are there, you need a safety.
You can go best player available, but I always do best player available at a need, because it makes no sense to me. It's like the best player available is a center. Well, we already have a center. Take him anyway. It's like, no. Yes, you're going to reach a little bit, but if you get the thing that you need before someone else can take it, I'm down. I won't reach too much, but I like to reach a little bit to get the things that I absolutely need to win football games. You know what I mean?
No, I mean that's it's a fair point, but
when you guys getting Jeffrey, I don't agree with getting the Williams because I think they're too similar of player.
Well, see, but also here, and that actually at least from the standpoint, because why not have 2 of the same thing if it's good? But I think a lot of people are enamored by the receiver because they want to make the argument that 1, Alshon does have some injury concerns, and 2, I don't know why people are buying into this. He's signed a 1-year deal, so that's the end. To me, it's only the end if 1, he misses in a handful of games or just does completely awful, that they don't bring him back. I really do believe for the long term, he took a 1-year deal to do a prove it deal, because look, if the guy goes out there and has, my projection for him was 75 catches, probably 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, the guy's going to get paid, and he's going to get paid handsomely. And that's why you've heard a lot of rumors about Jordan Matthews being trade bait, because they have to pay him too. So, I think that if you want to get Wentz another weapon like a Dave Williams, where, we need to see what Torrey Smith can do, because he had 2 very damn years in San Fran. And like I said, Alshon's coming in with some of the injury concerns. You might want to get a guy who's reliable at 14 if he's there.
Yeah, I just, for me, I'd rather, for the Eagles, get a guy like Corey Davis, who's a little bit of everything.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think you can go wrong either, but
it just, for me, I like to draft some variety in a mock draft, especially because if I look at Alshon Jeffrey, yes, he's coming off injuries, but I think he's signing that 1-year prove-it deal to prove it to the Eagles that he's worth a while to stay. And then he is a big possession guy. He's a tall dude.
He's 6'4", he's 6'4", 221 or something like that, but
so you need a guy who's going to take the top off the defense, and Torrey Smith can be that guy. Yes, he's older, but if you want to be like, listen, Corey Davis played the slot and the fly route in college, I would be like, that's the guy I'd want. Because Mike Williams is like, cool, now I have 2 Alshon Jeffreys, but no one's going to run that far.
I mean, that's not bad.
Right, but now I'm never challenging the safeties.
When you talk about
do curl routes.
Yeah, when you talk about need and the old BPA, the best player available, the Eagles are in a real tricky situation at 14 because they need corners. They need, a running back. They could wind up reaching, Some people want to argue that Christian McCaffrey is not worth the top 10. I think you're drinking poison. You just go watch his highlights and imagine him in the Eagles offense with what they do, or really any offense that runs a West Coast type of thing, West Coast type of offense. I mean, I think the guy is just so immensely talented. But, if I'm talking about the Eagles and best player available, I think that's what they have to do at 14. I sat here and went on a rant about they could go receiver, they could go corner, they could go running back. I think they really like McCaffrey if he fell. But I think 14 is a perfect spot because, like I said, there could be a couple corners there. There could be a couple running backs there. There could be a couple, Reuben Foster might be there. There could be a couple receivers. They're in a position where they have their draft board set by Joe Douglas, who was responsible for building up the Ravens a couple of years ago and was a head scout for the Ravens when they were a powerhouse and won the Super Bowl. So, it's just going to be so interesting to see what they do because I really do think at 14, thank you, Minnesota, for giving us that pick for Sam Bradford. But, at 14, I think they could go a lot of different ways, and it's just creating a lot of intrigue and interest.
Yeah, I mean, all these mock drafts can be right or wrong, but nothing matters until tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. So I'm excited for it. And when that first pick goes in, all hell's going to break loose.
Oh, yeah. So that'll pretty much wrap it up for us tonight. Like I said, and Alec alluded to, tomorrow night the NFL draft kicks off 8 p.m. ESPN will be doing a lot of the coverage. NFL Network will have their coverage. Kicks off in downtown Philadelphia. If you like what you heard, please like us and subscribe to us. And check us out on feedmesports.wordpress.com. You can bet your ass I'm going to have a recap of the Eagles draft, and I'm sure you and Lewis will have your recap of what the Giants did, the draft itself. So that'll wrap it up for us. So we will see you next week with a recap of the draft. I know we're going to get into some more WWE, especially with Payback being on Sunday, and some more NBA and NHL. So we'll see you next week.